The first time she hit my trash bin, I let it go. The 7th time, I bought cameras. By the time she did it for the 31st time, I stopped calling it an accident and started calling it what it was. A woman with a luxury SUV trying to drive me out of my own neighborhood, one plastic trash can at a time. My name is Ethan Cole. I was 46 back then, a residential plumber in Ashford County, Kentucky. Recently separated, running on bad coffee, child support paperwork, and the kind of quiet pride a man hangs onto when the rest of his life feels like it is held together with duct tape. I had moved into Willow Creek Estates because it looked peaceful, the kind of place with trimmed hedges, porch flags, polite waves, and kids riding bikes before dinner. And I thought maybe my daughter Lily could come over on weekends and feel like her dad had not completely fallen apart. What I did not know was that peace in Willow Creek had a gatekeeper, and her name was Marlene Voss. Marlene was 61, silver hair always sprayed into place, pearl earrings even at 7 in the morning, and a black Lexus GX she drove like it was a police cruiser. She was not the HOA president, not officially, but she had been on the architectural committee for 9 years and treated that little clipboard like it had been handed down from Mount Sinai. The actual president, a soft-handed insurance broker named Clay Dunmore, mostly nodded when Marlene talked, which meant she ran the neighborhood without ever having to say she ran it. The trouble started because of my corner lot. Trash pickup came every Wednesday, and county rules said the bin had to sit within 3 feet of the curb by 6 in the morning. Simple enough, except that spot happened to be near the wide curve Marlene took during her daily drive to the clubhouse pool, and somehow, in a street wide enough for 2 trucks and a school bus, my trash bin kept ending up under her front bumper. The first morning, I heard the crack before I saw anything, sharp and ugly like a branch snapping under ice. I came outside barefoot, half-dressed, holding a mug of coffee. I never got to drink, and there was my brand new blue bin split open across the driveway, banana peels, coffee grounds, and one of Lily's old drawings scattered in the wet grass. Marlene lowered her window and gave me a smile so thin it could cut paper. "Sorry about that, Mr. Cole," she said. Although she did not sound sorry at all, these streets really were not designed for clutter. I remember standing there with garbage juice soaking into my socks, trying to decide whether I was angry or embarrassed, and because I was still new, because I did not want to be the guy who starts a feud 2 months after moving in, I swallowed it. I told her accidents happen. She tilted her head and said, "That is a healthy attitude for someone adjusting to community standards." That phrase stuck with me. Adjusting to community standards, like I was a stray dog they had agreed to tolerate. The second time happened the next week. Same hour, same sound, same fake apology. The third time, she did not even stop, just tapped the bin hard enough to knock it into the gutter and kept rolling. By October, I'd replaced 4 bins, spent almost $100 I did not have, and Lily had started asking why the pretty lady in the black car hated our house. That question hit me harder than the damage, because a kid can feel tension before she understands it, and I had promised myself that whatever mess her mother and I were going through, my home would not feel like another battlefield. So I tried being reasonable. I caught Marlene near the mailboxes one afternoon, where she was telling a retired couple their pumpkins were too orange for the fall display guidelines. And I said, "Marlene, we need to talk about my trash bin." She smiled before I finished, that same little smile, and said, "Ethan, maybe Willow Creek is different from the places you have lived before, but here we care about appearance, flow, safety, the little things that keep property values from sliding." I said, "The county tells me exactly where to put it." She leaned closer, lowered her voice, and said, "Counties do not maintain standards, neighbors do." That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, bills stacked on one side, Lily's crayons on the other, and started reading county ordinances, HOA bylaws, right-of-way rules, anything I could find. I am a plumber, not a lawyer, but I know systems. Water, pressure, blockage, leaks, it is all connected, and when something keeps backing up, you do not blame the pipe closest to you, you trace the line. By midnight, I knew 2 things. 1, my bin placement was legal. 2, Willow Creek had no rule about what a trash bin had to be made of, only where it could be seen and when. At 6:12 the next Wednesday morning, Marlene's Lexus rolled around the bend again, slow enough for me to see her looking straight at my kitchen window, and when that bumper kissed my bin and sent it spinning across the curb, she did not smile like someone who had made a mistake. She smiled like someone delivering a message, and for the first time in months, I smiled back, because I had finally understood the kind of game she was playing, and I had just figured out the one rule she never thought I would read. The rule she never thought I would read was not buried very deep, but it might as well have been invisible to people like Marlene, because it said the HOA could regulate bins on private property, but it had no authority over county right-of-way during collection hours. I printed that page, highlighted it, and taped a copy inside my pantry door like some people tape up Bible verses. For a few days, I thought maybe knowing the law would calm me down, but it did the opposite. Once you understand somebody has been bluffing, every polite smile starts looking like a threat wearing lipstick. The next Wednesday, I set up a little camera in the front window, one of those cheap ones people use to watch their dogs, and I put the bin exactly where the county required it. 6:14, the Lexus turned the corner. 6:15, Marlene drifted close. 6:15, and maybe 10 seconds, she clipped the bin hard enough to crack the lid, then rolled past with one hand on the wheel, and the other holding her travel coffee like she was on her way to brunch. I had it all on video. When I showed it to my neighbor, Nora Bell, she covered her mouth and whispered, "Lord have mercy." She is not even trying to hide it. Nora was 72, widowed, sharp as a tack, and had lived in Willow Creek since the first model homes went up. She told me Marlene had always needed someone to push around, first a young couple with a camper, then a retired school teacher with wildflowers in her yard, then me. "You are convenient," Nora said, "because you are new, you work with your hands, and you do not have a wife standing beside you at board meetings." I laughed when she said it, but there was a sting in there I carried all day. That Friday, the HOA sent me my first formal violation. Improper placement of waste receptacle, creating a vehicular obstruction, 72 hours to correct or face daily fines. I stood in the kitchen reading that letter while Lily colored at the table, and I remembered this strange hot shame rising in my chest, not because I had done anything wrong, but because someone had found a way to make my life look unstable on paper. In a custody fight, paper matters, reports matter, neighborhood complaints matter. So I did what I do when a pipe bursts inside a wall. I stopped staring at the water and started opening things up. I emailed the county sanitation office, got confirmation of the placement rule, paid a surveyor $95 to mark the right-of-way, and asked Nora for a written statement. Then I went to the next HOA meeting with a folder thick enough to make Clay Dunmore start sweating before I even sat down. Marlene was already at the front table in a cream blazer, tapping her pen like a judge about to sentence somebody. When public comment opened, I stood and said, "I would like the board to explain why I'm being fined for following county law." That room went so quiet I could hear the soda machine humming in the hallway. I read the ordinance. I showed the survey. I played the video. Clay cleared his throat 3 times and said they would take the matter under advisement, which is what people say when they have been caught without a plan. Marlene waited until we were in the parking lot to show me who she really was. She stepped close enough for me to smell peppermint gum and expensive perfume, and she said, "You think a few printouts make you belong here, Ethan?" I looked at her, and maybe I should have walked away, but something in me had been stepped on too many times. I said, "No, Marlene. The deed to my house does that." Her face changed. Not much, just enough. The smile disappeared, and what was underneath was colder than I expected. "You will regret making this public," she said. I did not answer. I did not need to. My phone was recording from my shirt pocket. The next week, she switched tactics. I got notices for grass height, mailbox discoloration, a loose porch railing, and a garden hose visible from the street for more than 20 minutes. 20 minutes. I walked the neighborhood that Saturday with a tape measure and took pictures of the same violations on nearly every block, including Clay Dunmore's own mailbox, which had faded so badly it looked like it had survived a house fire. That was when I stopped thinking this was just about a trash bin. This was about control, and Marlene had built a little kingdom where rules were only rules when they helped to hurt somebody. The concrete idea came from my cousin Wade, who poured patios for a living and had the kind of grin that meant bad advice or genius, sometimes both. I told him the whole story over gas station coffee, and he said, "Does the HOA say your trash bin has to be plastic?" I said no. He stirred his coffee, looked at me, and said, "Then build her a lesson with wheels." We spent Sunday in my garage with a standard bin shell, drainage holes, steel mesh, and just enough concrete tucked into the lower frame to make it heavy, legal, and absolutely uninterested in being bullied. From the street, it looked normal, a little scuffed maybe, but normal. Inside, it had the emotional range of a bank vault. Wednesday morning came gray and cold. I set the bin by the curb, checked the camera angle, poured coffee, and stood behind the kitchen curtain feeling like a man who had set a mousetrap but was not sure whether to feel proud of himself. 6:15. Here came the Lexus. Marlene slowed, saw the same blue bin, and I swear she smiled. Then she turned into it. The sound was not a crack this time. It was a deep, ugly thud, followed by a metallic scrape that made my teeth clench. Her front running board folded upward like a cheap lawn chair. The bin rocked once, settled back, and just sat there. Marlene froze behind the wheel. For a full 30 seconds, nothing moved except the steam from my coffee. Then, because pride is a powerful drug, she backed up and hit it again. When she hit it the second time, the Lexus made a sound I can only describe as expensive regret. The bumper popped loose on one side. The fog light blinked once like it was asking for help, and Marlene sat there gripping the wheel with both hands, staring at that trash bin like it had personally betrayed her. I did not go outside. I did not wave. I did not gloat. I just stood in my kitchen, coffee cooling in my hand, and felt something I had not felt in months. Not victory exactly, but balance. For the first time, her choices were landing back on her own driveway. By Friday, half the neighborhood had noticed the damage. Nora told me teenagers at the bus stop were calling it the blue brick wall, and somebody had started keeping count on a whiteboard in their garage. Marlene, of course, got worse. People like that do not back down when they lose control. They reach for a bigger lever. First came the demand for an emergency inspection of my property. Then came a county complaint about an unauthorized concrete structure, which ended with a board inspector looking at the bin for maybe 15 seconds and saying, "Sir, that is a trash can." Then came anonymous posts online about dangerous residents lowering standards, which was Marlene's favorite way of saying exactly what she meant without saying it directly. But the strange thing was, the harder she pushed, the more people started talking. A board member named Denise Harper pulled me aside after a neighborhood chili cook-off, her voice low, her eyes nervous, and said, "Ethan, you need to look at the landscaping contracts." That was the sentence that changed everything. I went home, opened county business records, HOA meeting minutes, and vendor payment summaries, and by 2 in the morning, I was staring at the real reason Marlene could not stand anyone questioning her authority. A company called Voss Property Services had been getting Willow Creek repair and landscaping jobs for 8 months. Fence staining, sidewalk patching, clubhouse maintenance, little contracts, small enough not to alarm anyone, but steady enough to drain the account. Marlene's brother was listed as manager. Her signature appeared on every approval. The bids were always just barely cheaper than the others, close enough to look fair, too perfect to be honest. Suddenly, the trash bin was not a trash bin anymore. It was the loose thread on a sweater she had been stealing from the whole neighborhood. I printed everything, backed it up, and handed copies to Denise, Nora, and a local attorney who owed me a favor from a bathroom remodel gone sideways. 2 weeks later, Willow Creek held the most crowded HOA meeting I have ever seen. People stood along the walls, in the hallway, even outside the double doors, and Marlene walked in wearing a red blazer and the face of a woman who had practiced being offended in the mirror. I brought the bin with me, rolled it right beside the podium. Clay Dunmore asked if that was necessary, and Nora said, louder than she probably meant to, "It seems to be the only witness she cannot intimidate." The room laughed. But it was nervous laughter, the kind that comes before a storm breaks. I stood up and told them everything. Not like a lawyer, not like a hero, just like a tired man who had finally had enough. I showed the videos, the fines, the county letters, the inspection report, then the contracts. When I put Voss Property Services on the screen, the room shifted. You could feel it. That exact second when people realized their dues had not been protecting property values, they had been protecting Marlene. She stood so fast her chair hit the wall. "This is a personal attack," she snapped, pointing at me. "People like him move in here and think they can rewrite the rules." And there it was, clean and ugly, the truth under the polish. Denise called for an immediate audit. Another board member seconded it. Clay looked like he wanted the carpet to swallow him whole. The vote passed, 4-1, with Marlene voting no while everyone stared at her. 3 weeks later, she resigned. The audit recovered just over $38,000 in improper payments. Clay stepped down. Voss Property Services vanished from the vendor list, and every homeowner got a refund check that was not huge, but felt like justice folded into an envelope. As for Marlene, she sent me one final letter through an attorney demanding that I remove the concrete bin because it created emotional distress. I framed it and hung it in my garage. Now, I still live in Willow Creek. The bin sits by the curb every Wednesday, scratched up, ugly, and dependable. which honestly is how I feel some mornings too. And here is the part people argue about whenever I tell this story. Some say I went too far, that I should have just moved the bin, kept the peace, let the HOA handle it quietly. Maybe. But peace that only works when one person stays silent is not peace. It is permission. So I want to know what you think. Was I wrong to let Marlene destroy her own Lexus on a perfectly legal trash can? Or was that just the bill finally coming due? Drop your take in the comments. Tell me who was right, who was wrong, and whether you have ever seen an HOA bully mistake patience for weakness. And if you want more stories where ordinary people fight back with proof, timing, and just enough stubbornness to make the powerful nervous, hit subscribe. Because trust me, this neighborhood was not the only one with secrets hiding behind clean sidewalks and fresh mulch.